No, let's do some hexagrams. Hexagram. I'm going to do hexagram 3 today. I actually called this one in last night. I called in the 28 yesterday, but I've already done it. And I had an amazing session with a mentor of mine, and I was embodying this new type of feeling, this new way of being, and it was confusing to me. So what is this? What is going on? Like, I feel so me. And I asked the sage last night when I was in bed with Cassie. We have a reading. We read together, and I asked the sage, well, is there a hexagram that relates to this feeling that I have, this thing? And it took me to this one here, number 3. So here we go. Share my screen here and find the third. Here we go. Making a new beginning. Hexagram 3, making a new beginning. The judgment. It furthers one to persevere in not undertaking anything until clarity is attained. It furthers one to appoint helpers. While hexagrams 1 and 2 describe the basic nature of the cosmos, the sage has used this hexagram to define the human place in it. A person receives this hexagram at times when he is making a new beginning, whether it be in his relationship with himself or another, in his job, or in his learning a new lesson from the sage. The hexagram wants to make him aware that the new beginning is a cosmic gift after a fate that he had created has ended. In order to make a real new beginning, he needs to attain clarity about the cosmic law of fate. See glossary, fate. The cosmic gift that enables the person to make a new beginning may have come as an inheritance, a love relationship, a child, or help of any kind. Such gifts are expressions of the cosmos/nature's generosity in increasing everything that is in harmony with it. One of the purposes of fate is to bring a person back to humility, which is a state of being in harmony with the cosmos. The gift makes him experience what it is like to be in that harmony and thus participate in the constant stream of blessings that come from the cosmos. At this starting point, the person is uncertain how to relate to his gift. The lines of this hexagram offer him guidance in this respect. The first step is for him to recognize its cosmic nature. The second is to recognize its purpose. The gift he has received is meant to help him free his true self. It wants to be seen as giving him an opportunity to deepen his understanding of the dynamics of life, both in its visible and invisible aspects. The third step is to acknowledge his responsibility to the gift. This responsibility is to not allow the ego to appropriate the gift to its purposes, which would happen if it were used to develop a new self-image such as that of the benefactor or person of influence, money gift. In the case of receiving the gift of a child, the danger lies in adopting a self-image that fulfills the role of the mother or the role of the father or head of the family, as defined by the collective ego. In the case of the gift of a love relationship, the self-image might be that of the man who dominates or the woman who yields, or vice versa. In all such new beginnings, the ego, which has not yet been routed, stands on the side offering flattering suggestions as to how the person can gain extra status or advantage through the gift. If he listens to these suggestions or entertains them in any way, the ego succeeds in remaining in control. As the servant of the collective ego, the individual ego is always a robber waiting to steal a person's cosmic gifts to turn them to the collective ego's use in hopes of gaining its approval, rewards, and authorization. When the person allows the ego to seize the gift, he creates a new fate. A person frequently receives this hexagram when, upon beginning his lessons with the sage that speaks through the I Ching, he unconsciously transports he unconsciously transports into his lessons his preconceived ideas, fears, expectations, and pre-structured ways of approaching situations. So as long as these pre-existing elements are in place, nothing should be undertaken because they would unconsciously influence the situation. What is true for all the other new beginnings mentioned. What is true here is true for all the other new beginnings mentioned. This hexagram also refers to a person who, after he has experienced the burnout of a mistaken idea or belief, seeks to make a new beginning. This new beginning will not be possible, however, if he carries forward his anger, disappointment, and fear of further failure, as these would prevent him from having the openness needed to communicate with the sage or appoint helpers, as the judgment recommends, referring to the helpers of the invisible world. This hexagram also wants to make the beginning student of the I Ching aware that his situation of the moment is the material to which he is meant to apply what he learns. Moreover, no detail of his experience is too small or insignificant to be of use in this learning process. The sage does not teach theoretical lessons, but uses the situation at hand to teach him that each situation contains an inner truth that is not obvious to the eye. It then shows him the new way he is meant to relate to situations, as for example, by saying the inner no to what is correct, and calling on the helpers of the invisible world to do what is necessary to correct it. It furthers one to persevere and not undertake anything, also refers to the suspension of disbelief that is necessary before a new beginning can take place. The sage realizes that each person brings with him belief systems that are in conflict with what he learns. The sage never engages in argument or in efforts to prove anything, but allows the student to discover the truth for himself, often repetitively, until he knows it from within. Even this cannot take place, however, unless the student is willing to temporarily put aside his distrust and at least temporarily suspend his disbelief. This effort alone is required. Another mistake of the beginner is to transfer onto the sage all his existing ideas of authority, including that of the highest authority. He needs to recognize that this is the activity of the ego, which, by putting the sage on a pedestal, seeks to gain favors in exchange for obeisance. Obeisance. Let's get the definition of that. Differential respect. They paid obeisance to the prince, a gesture expressing differential respect, such as a bow or curtsy. Okay, cool. The sage retreats whenever the ego is present, and the messages the person receives become confused. See the sage. Another obstruction to learning from the sage is the fear that the sage will require the person to change in a manner that he is unable or unwilling to do. In fact, the sage will present him only with truths that he is capable of understanding and following, and which he can clearly see are in harmony with his true nature. Other fears connected with the beginning are expressed as doubt. What is it? The I Ching. Will it tell me the truth? Can I rely on it? Can I trust it? Will it protect me? Will it punish me if I make a mistake? What if it says something that is against my beliefs? Will I fall under its influence and not be able to get free? Will it mean I will have to leave my family, friends, partner, or be abandoned by them? Will it ask me, will it ask me to change myself so that I am no longer the person I am now? Is the sage evil? All of these doubts belong to the ego and its fears of being displaced by the true self. Once the person begins to discover his inner truth, the sage makes no demands that a person do anything. It only helps him to see his inner truth. The sage also does not does not ask a person to trust or have faith. It makes itself available to show the sincere student how his fears block him from realizing his inner truth, how they create in his psyche the demonic sphere of consciousness that attempts to rule his life. It shows him how, by taking away the mistaken beliefs he has adopted from the collective ego, he can learn the true way of the cosmos and free his true nature, which is in harmony with the whole. The beginner also needs to understand that the sage does not teach beliefs. Moreover, it discourages him from adopting any. A frequent mistake of the beginner is to look around for other belief systems to replace the ones he has discarded. This is because he has been falsely taught as a child that he needs a belief system, because his inner truth is not trustworthy, and because he is not capable of having his own connection with the cosmos. Accordingly, he may easily fall into the temptation to see the I Ching as teaching the same universal truths contained in all religions. He needs to realize that this is but one more ploy of the collective ego to remain in control through equating what he learns from the sage with conventional beliefs. In this way, it provides a platform for likening the sage with the enlightened human beings it recognizes. Another misunderstanding that occurs at the beginning comes from thinking in terms of changes rather than transformations. The I of the I Ching has been translated either as changes or transformation because the two have been used interchangeably in China. The sage makes us aware that harmony with the cosmos is not to be achieved through making superficial changes, such as changing one's mind, habits, or attitudes. True change is impossible so long as a person retains the false program introjected into his psyche during childhood. Transformations occur on the base level of consciousness when he deprograms the false phrases and images of this program. A true new beginning requires that he examine and rid himself, with the help of the RTCM, of the false basic premises that underlie all belief systems he has accepted into his psyche, whether consciously or unconsciously. He needs to add nothing. What is uncovered through this effort is his true self that is in harmony with the cosmos. This is the effort that leads to transformation by engaging the helpers of the invisible world. This is also the meaning indicated by Lao Tzu when he described freeing the true self as daily diminishing aspects of the ego. The particular helper associated with this hexagram is the one that helps us find the root phrases and images, spells and projections stored in our psyche that discourage us from making a new beginning. The robber mentioned in line 2 is the collective ego that poses as a helper having the right solution. These solutions always propose handling the situation by external means and by taking outer action. Spells connected with this hexagram often have to do with phrases or images that present new beginnings as difficult. They are difficult only so long as a person does not recognize the existence of the sage and the helpers and does not ask for their help. Plunging ahead without a clear view of the inner truth of a situation certainly leads to difficulties. Among such phrases are, I would not know where to begin, as an excuse not to begin, and all beginnings are difficult. Such thinking incorrectly views developing oneself as contorting one's nature into a model form. The effort to liberate the true self under the sage's guidance does not burden the person with endless chores and false disciplines. It frees him from within through stages of growth. Each time a person rids himself of a spell, he frees helpers within himself, making the task easier and easier as he goes. All right, the lines. All right, line 1. Hesitate because there is a hindrance. It furthers to remain persevering. It furthers to appoint healers. It furthers to appoint helpers. Line 1. A person can receive this line when at the beginning of a situation he feels impelled to take action simply from the belief that taking no action is weak or bad. The word hesitate indicates that he lacks clarity, therefore it is unfavorable to take any outer action. The person needs to discover and eliminate the mistaken beliefs he holds about his true nature, which are the hindrances mentioned. They prevent his seeing with clarity that his true nature, which is composed of helpers, possesses everything he needs to live his life in harmony with nature. His true nature also connects him with all the helping aspects of the cosmos. His mistaken ideas and beliefs have put spells both on his true nature and on the cosmic helpers, blocking their harmonious functioning. Taking away these spells will free his feelings from which true clarity comes. To identify the phrases of the spells, he needs the help of the sage and the helpers of the invisible world. He must persist in this effort by using the RTCM until he has been assured by the sage that he has correctly and adequately identified them. See page 540, Freeing Yourself from Mistaken Ideas and Beliefs. Spells connected with this line are contained in the phrase, "There is no one to help me but myself." This spell imprisons a person's personal helpers through his believing that everything needs to be accomplished by mental calculation, effort, and striving. Such a person carries the world on his shoulders. I actually think that's covered in number 28. The belief that a person's animal nature is inferior and that it became free of it, he needs to develop his spiritual nature. This idea divides a person's wholeness into parts that are considered antagonistic. A person's true nature is inextricably connected with his body, which is the vehicle for for receiving chi energy, life force, from the cosmos. Disdain of the body blocks the nourishing and healing chi and thus creates susceptibility to illness. Such a person needs the help of the sage to free his animal nature from this spell or slander. The idea that all things have their origin in ideas. The cosmic consciousness originates things from its feelings, not from ideas. The person who holds this idea has put a spell or slander on his feelings so that he looks to ideas for truth rather than to his feelings. He has done so by accepting the flattery that his two frontal lobes are the most important part of his brain. This belief has also created another spell on the rest of his brain, which has been dismissed as primitive. The spell has blocked many synapses and capabilities of the dismissed parts of the brain. See page 546. What are spells? This line may also indicate a person who wishes to act, just to end the ambiguity that accompanies not acting. Instead, the person needs to inwardly ask the sage to be guided. If he remains open, the answer will show itself. If he gives the sage the necessary space by dispersing his distrust, dispersal of distrust is a conscious act of saying the inner no to phrases expressing doubt about the sage's existence and about its ability to respond and do what is needed. C. Freeing yourself from seed phrases and images. Line 2. Difficulties pile up. Horse and wagon turn about. If the robber were not there, the wooer would come. The maiden is faithful, she does not pledge herself. 10 years, then she pledges herself. Line 2. This line points out that difficulties pile up when a person interprets the words of the I Ching as verifying his mistaken ideas and beliefs. This happens because he takes its words as literal calls to act outwardly and as an excuse to use power to make things happen. He does not realize that the sage can connect with him only through the resonance of the specific words and phrases regarding his situation that comes through his feelings. If his mind is operating without any connection to his heart, the messages of the sage cannot get through to him. The wagon is a metaphor for his feelings, and the horse for the words. The message makes sense only when they are connected. Both are helpers that have come to help, but have been turned back. The robber is a metaphor for the collective ego, which has interjected its conventional beliefs between the person and what the sage is trying to say. The maiden is faithful refers to the sage and the helpers that, being true to themselves, cannot give their support under these circumstances. 10 years, 10 years is a metaphor that says the sage will never come as long as the person holds to those beliefs. The maiden is faithful also refers to situations in which a person is tempted to make a deal to be faithful to another in exchange for advantages gained. Such deals are inconsistent with his true self. Further, they involve him in obligations that are embarrassing and prevent his true partner from approaching. As this line makes clear, the person approaching with the deal does so with the intention of robbing him of something: his goods, his chi energy, his good name, his integrity, etc. Seed phrases that lead one to accept such deals are: you have to be willing to compromise to get along. There is no such thing as the right person for you. The right person or help always comes too late. You can't count on anything in this life. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Sometimes you have to settle for less. It's the best deal I'll ever get. In my circumstances, you don't look a gift horse in the mouth. All such phrases create spells that keep a person locked into positions in which he must compromise himself. See the deprogramming procedure. Line 3. Whoever hunts deer without the forest only loses his way in the forest. Line 3. The forest in this line refers to demonized nature, but particularly to a person's nature. The hunting of deer is a metaphor for the hunting of demons that are populating his psyche due to spells. The forester represents the sage. So the line again, the beginning here. Whoever hunts deer without the forester only loses his way in the forest. That makes it more sense. The forester represents the sage as the only one that can lead him in this hunt. The killing of these demons frees him to be his true self and ends his separation from nature and the cosmic whole. The hunter can also be a person who asks questions of the sage from idle curiosity just to be in the know about the way of the cosmos. Such a person takes for granted the human-centered view of the universe that humans have a right to know everything and the freedom to do whatever they want with nature. This line warns him that treating nature as a set of mechanics invokes a fate. He's losing his way in the forest. This line also describes the person who believes the universe operates as a set of mechanics and sees the I Ching as defining how the mechanics work. The sage cannot communicate with him because his beliefs put a spell on his ability to understand. Two other spells referred to by this line have to do with the idea that to be in the know is to be like God. It is based on the second spell that says he is unworthy unless he knows the nature of good and evil. See deprogramming procedure. Line 4. Return to the way. Line 4. Horse and wagon part, return to the way. To go brings good fortune. Everything acts to further. The horse and wagon represent things that are meant to cooperate to achieve progress, as in the unity between thoughts and feelings, mind and heart. Here, the things meant to cooperate have been separated by spells and the wrong conclusions mentioned in the previous lines. Return to the way counsels the person to rid himself of these impediments to his progress. A person makes true progress by ridding himself of the demons in his psyche. The collective ego, by contrast, would have him make progress by following the new path it proposes, leading him to a new fate. If he will only walk on the path of his inner truth, which has not been trod by anyone else, everything will act to further. Line 5. Difficulties in blessing. A little perseverance brings good fortune. Great perseverance brings misfortune. Here, the difficulties encountered refer to the retreat of the sage that occurs when the ego takes over a person's work on developing himself. The ego hopes, through ambitious and pious work, to be recognized by the sage as spiritual. The meaning of a little perseverance is to approach liberating the true self with modesty. This means not to forget to live one's life joyfully. The ego, in its striving, would drive the person to ascetic extremes and deprivations. This is the meaning of great perseverance brings misfortune. The problem with the idea of being spiritual is that it contains all the self flattery that maintains the ego as leader of the personality. It further divides a person's true nature into a higher and lower self, splitting his wholeness and placing spells on what is believed to be his lower or animal nature. Accepting this idea creates a fate which is usually that of illness. This line can also indicate a person whose progress is blocked due to mistaken beliefs about the purpose of human life. It can refer to human centered beliefs such as, I have to do it all. Humans are the representatives of heaven on earth. Humans are responsible for making everything work and for creating order in the world. Such difficulties in blessings, such difficulties in blessing can be erased if he asks the sage to help him rid himself of these mistaken beliefs. This will engage the helper of transformation to remove the blocks created by these phrases in his inner program. Line 6, and then I'll do my reflections. Line 6, horse and wagon part, bloody tears flow. Horse and wagon part refers to the doubt a person has that he will ever reach his goal, whether that be to unite with another, to find the job that really suits him, or the freeing of his true self. Doubt coming from the ego has taken over his psyche, with the result being the bitter or bloody tears mentioned. The blood refers to the consequent loss of the will to go on. The underlying reason for not having attained his goal is that the ego was busy on the side seeking to fulfill a certain self image. For this reason, the help needed from the invisible world was not available. This help could become available if he would rid himself of the ego's ambition to fulfill the self image. This line frequently refers to the goal of fulfilling the self image of the superior man, referred to in Confucian versions of the I Ching, or the spiritual person. This line can also refer to the fate a person is experiencing due to having accepted mistaken ideas and beliefs, such as life has a beginning and an end. This fills him with the hopelessness that produces the bitter tears mentioned. Such a view prevents him from recognizing that life is a continuum with one dimension to another and separates him from the cosmic whole. To reunite the cosmos, he needs to reunite himself. To reunite with the cosmos, he needs to rid himself of this incorrect idea. C. Freeing yourself from mistaken ideas. All right. I'm going to grab my book with my notes in it from my contemplations. I'll be right back. Yeah, perfect. So on my notes, I just realized that I wasn't actually supposed to record this one today, and I have. And I got lines 1 and 4 for this. And what was really helpful for me in this contemplation of the third last night was that it really pointed me back towards the sage to inwardly ask. And that was the line 1 piece. And the line 4 was the heart and the mind and walk my own path. And then the hexagram I drew in today, which again backed up all of this, I did the 27. So 3 was last night and the 27 was this morning. I'll record the 27 after this one. And this new version of me that I created with my mentor, I needed to kill the old version of me and metaphorically kill. And what I found in my journey of identity is that sometimes we just need another identity in the short term to help us get to whatever the next destination is. And what I found in the mentors that I choose is they know the right buttons to push or guidance to encourage or the handheld to handhold to cultivate this new identity. So the previous identity that was killed, his name was Johnny Diamond, and we made him years ago to be confident enough to assert himself into the world and the relationship coaching market. And then what's happened is there's been these reoccurring themes of where I am deeply antagonistic to other people in the space. And some people enjoy the antagonism, but what it's really doing is it's more about this immature need to disrupt out of rejection or something else. It was actually laid. It was about rejection and scarcity and not feeling enough, right? Not feeling enough. And in that not enoughness, like I would demand it, like tantrum it. Yeah. And that can show up in some of my content. So this new identity, was it Genuine John? I think we called him Genuine John, who is more of a fatherly type energy archetype, but it's not. It's a little bit more than there's something else in there that I haven't. I'm still embodying it by taking action steps, by doing the things, asking the sage to handle whatever needs to be handled, the helpers to come in, right? And in that, it usually takes about 3 days. 3 is a recurring theme. 3 days for the shifts to happen at an atomic atomic level, and then 3 minutes to hold off on the urge for the ego to take over and try and assert it or sell it or something, right? So this contemplation of the third was very helpful for me in getting the guidance from the sage that this is a new beginning. It's a new beginning, and usually these beginnings happen in ripples. Like there's other people in my circles and sphere, even those outside, we're all connected, but there's more new beginnings that happen. And what I found for myself and being able to feel very deeply is being able to catch the ego when the ego is doing the ego things, because the ego also occupies a feeling space. I can feel myself in the 5 personality patterns. The 5 personality patterns work. We call it upward displacement. When all of a sudden you feel this rush of energy into the head, and technology in particular, like phones and computers and not being outside, can upwardly displace you, puts you in your thoughts, puts you in your mental faculties. And this Johnny Diamond version of me, super knowledgeable, like loves being able to like argue with people at an intellectual level, but then he's missing the heart piece. And I've attempted to connect to the heart a few times, but there seems to be something that drags me back, or I drag myself back, because the ego is such a known. Like I didn't have this scaffolding that came from the I Ching before. So it's been really helpful in order for me to see how deep the conditioning goes, and then being able to acknowledge that there's a way out, right? There's a way out through this. So I got lines 1 and 4 in this. It's going to come back to 4. And sometimes you can, if you choose to, because I'm developing a relationship with the sage outside of crisis, then it's like any relationship that you develop outside of some kind of crisis. Because if you develop a relationship inside crisis, then it tends to not last outside of the crisis. And coming back to the line 4 is this concept of this new path. And that while all the systems that I know, like the 5 personality patterns, human design, gene keys, family constellations, voice dialogue, gestalt, shadow work, dream work, like even landmark stuff, landmark terminology, masculine, feminine polarity, all that stuff, like they're still not my path, right? There might be aspects to the journey that I go on through my path, but my own path is untrodden. It's got fresh. There's no footprints from anybody else. It is mine. It's mine. I might cross over with other people's paths, but it is mine, which feeds into and encourages this journey, not the journey, but this representation of who we are as people, as humans, of being unique essences within the cosmic whole, which is different from being special. Because when I'm feeling inferior or inadequate, I want to make myself special by performing, right? Making a post about the stuff that I've done or my performances or how much better I am than that group of people or how I know more than they do, right? And that is pure ego, which also ties up the helpers, the sage retreats. But I can only get to this point by being the best self that I can, which is the modesty and sincerity that the sage speaks to too, where it's like you got to be all of you, even if that includes the ego, to get the lessons, to get the feedback, to get the fates, to be like, oh, this is that thing. And because I have a mentor that monitors what I do online, that he can give me that feedback. I'm like, hey, John, like you saw you did this. What was in that for you? What was really there for you, right? So in that I find people who operate like they have facilitators for the helpers and the sage, but that comes from feeling like the mentor that I chose. Initially, my feeling was off until I watched one of his videos that he made for me. Right, and I've been working with this guy for years, and he's my feelings say this is the guy. This is the guy. And I've had a lot of mentors over the years, but because who he is and the work that he's done on his self, he can see me in a way that I am unable to see myself, and that might be a belief system, might be a belief. And there's something about the connection that I deeply love, and having someone to talk to and bounce things off, which I find mentorship gives that the to and fro, which I think is invaluable. All right, that's what I have for my reflections. I'm going to go and record the 27 now. Let's see you on the other side of that one. All right, mad love. Bye.